So, Bill, is the bass your first instrument?
Well, that's interesting. It's my first real instrument.
Yeah.
But I learned to play the guitar when I was in like 4th grade or something.
Yeah.
And I wanted to play the clarinet, but I had braces. They wouldn't let me play the clarinet. Push your teeth out. They're already pretty Bugs Bunny like, and so I played the trombone briefly, which is another bass clef instrument, but I had braces, so it was not comfortable to put the mouthpiece against your lips with the braces. And then in 9th grade, someone gave me a really crappy bass because they got a better bass. Then they took me to a jam session, and there were like 40 guitar players there, each of whom got one song before they got muscled out. But there was only my friend and me that played bass, and he wanted to go off and do the kinds of things you would do at backyard parties in the 70s. And I ended up playing for like 2 hours. He said, whatever a guitar player does, just go to that place and play something. So the first tune I ever played on the bass was Sympathy for the Devil, a backyard party in San Gabriel in 1970, whatever, something or another. So then I thought, wow, there's really something to this, man. You could play, get to play a lot, even though you don't know what the heck you're doing. I just kept playing the bass,
Wow. So you started basically in the early 70s then, it sounds like.
Yeah, 9th grade.
Yeah, right. So you've been playing for
74, yeah.
Long.
40 years.
40 plus years, yeah. Did you, were you ever making up songs too at that early stage, or,
A little bit, yeah. It's in various groups. We play a couple of our original tunes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So you were involved in composition early on as well?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it was just, like little rock chord progressions, so they were probably lifted from some other rock chord progression and put together in some way. Yeah. But the thing about me, the bass players I listened to back then, I was playing the electric bass for quite a long time. They were bass players that were very busy bass players, and they were not just playing the chord roots like the guitar players were playing. So Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Yes, all these players, but the bass players played a lot of notes, very melodic, and so that always influenced me a lot, So basically, even when we were playing cover tunes that they play, I just I played whatever the hell I wanted to play,
Right.
And maybe it was, maybe it was appropriate and maybe it wasn't, but I didn't really give a shit.
So, so you were experimenting as well within the rock scene that you were involved in too.
Yeah, right away. I was, it was about trying to make some kind of, play what you feel. Mm-hmm. I mean, since I compose, I'm understanding.
Right.
Well, this is the form that's going on.
Sure.
So, can I do something that I feel free doing, and yet that somehow complements the structure of the piece?
Right. So you also, currently you compose a lot of what folks would call jazz.
Jazz. It's an enormous word.
Well, it's an enormous word. It's got enormous history.
Yeah. Let's not get into that.
Well, no. You started working.
You have only 60 minutes.
Well, yeah. You started working within the rock scene, and then what was it that? Was there a particular influence or recording or other bass players that influenced your work in terms of going towards the improvised / jazz, scene or the industry?
Well, yeah. So there was a teacher at my high school that I was always interested in walking bass lines. I liked how that sounded. And there was a guy in my high school, a teacher, who actually was studying bass with Ray Brown. So I got a bunch of Ray Brown records, up at Pooh Bah Records in Pasadena, where you could get cutouts for 97 cents or $1.97. So you could purchase a lot of things at Pooh Bah as experiments and find out, do I like this or do I not like it, So that was a great resource. So I kind of he showed me some modes, that teacher. But the other thing is my uncle really liked Duke Ellington, and I was not all that into it at an early age, but one night I was listening to the headphones and I was tripping my brains out on LSD, and I thought, maybe I should listen to this Black Sabbath. I'm bored with this stuff, man. You know, so I pulled out the Benny Goodman record and the Duke Ellington record. I put them on with my headphones. And I go, whoa, what in the heck? This is, wow. Because the Ellington, particularly the tonal palette, was really stunning after all of that guitar, you know?
Wow.
Guitar music, and suddenly horns. I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. And so then, you know, but then so I became so that night I wrote "sucks" on my Led Zeppelin t-shirt. I went to school the next day, an instant pariah. Right? But so then I got into that, but really I was listening to a lot of fusion, which really is just, you know, it's just like heavy metal for like geeky guys. So it's, you know, maybe it's a little more advanced, but it's still shred, that kind of crap. You know, but in high school I met this guy, Mark Rappaport, who was really into free jazz and knew Bobby Bradford, and he worked at Pooh Bah. So now every time I went to Pooh Bah, he'd give me all this free jazz stuff, which really I started seeing, whoa, now this is even weirder.
Right.
And so then I really became pretty fond of that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was only really actually later when I took a class at Pasadena City College with Bobby Bradford that I started understanding the connection between Duke Ellington and, say, John Carter, or you know, Bird and Ornette, or Jelly Roll Morton and Cecil Taylor, this kind of thing. Right. Then I started seeing, well, it's all a continuum, you know. I mean, it's not really a big break from the tradition. It's just you keep moving to new places, and the social milieu is different, and you know. So the '60s, there's a lot of freedom, and this kind of thing became the music reflected that social world. You know?
Right, exactly.
So for me, in the '90s or the '80s, I would say the '80s. People diss the '80s for music, but I'm telling you, man, I saw so much great jazz music in the '80s. John Carter, Sun Ra, Cecil Taylor. These guys would sell out. Art Ensemble sold out Yoshi's 7 nights in a row. They had to clear the house between sets. So that was my '80s. I don't know what the hell other people are listening to, A Blondie or some crap. I don't know because I was going to see, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah, you were just
really Threadkill, all this kind of, you know.
Yeah.
You know, so that's when I get really immersed into that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So, but then, you know, I was also kind of a deadhead, and I went out to see a lot of music in the '80s. But in my playing, I was kind of I was coasting along, you know, until I got hooked up with this band Bardo, and Bardo was all original music, and if you brought something in, they would play it, and it was weird. It was very wildly eclectic, you know. It was everything from Irish folk song kind of gone twisted to weird time signatures to Coltrane's India, stuff like that, all kind of things. And it was theatrical. We wore weird costumes. I was in that band with Dave Mahali, who was in Obstreperous Doves with me.
Right.
I've known him forever and ever. And so at that point, when I got in Bardo, I thought, man, I really got to be in this band. This is important for me. I'm going to have to practice and really get better as a player and as a writer. So that's really when I started blossoming, and I became obsessed with the idea I can't be a spectator anymore. So I stopped going to movies. I stopped watching TV. I stopped going out to music. I would only play, you know, kind of iconoclastically. I refuse to be a spectator. You know. You know.
Huh.
So I'm not that way now.
Well, okay. I was going to ask you that.
No, there was like this 8 or 10 years where I was always like wanted to flog that idea. You know.
Right.
You know.
Your version of the woodshed, so to speak.
Yeah. Right. But of course, you know, you can observe without being a spectator. So now I'm more into, you know, if you're a critical thinker, then you listen to music or you see a movie or something, you're engaged with it. So it's not, you know, so you're not really spectating as much as you're,
right,
you know, chewing it up and digesting it,
right,
and making it into your flesh. You know,
right, as your part of your existence.
Your being, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, right.
Spiritual.
Right. So you've been pretty prolific now for in composition and recordings. I think, gosh, one of your first records that you had your new compositions on was that with After the End of the World Quartet, or
Oh yeah, that's true. Bardo, maybe there was a couple of tunes on a couple of Bardo things, but when Bardo ended, Annalisa Zamula and Dave Mahali and myself formed this band after the end of the World Quartet.
Yeah.
And
it's like 23 years ago, right?
Yeah, that was in and so I composed a lot of music for that. Everyone composed in that band. That's when I really started really composing.
Yeah.
That was in the late 80s, 89 I think was our first gig.
Right.
At the Albion.
Right.
bar, which is now Delirium or whatever.
Oh, right, okay.
Mission by the Roxy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's when I really started composing a lot. And then there was a little hiatus in the late 90s where I was trying to navigate getting out of having a straight job. So I started being a side person, and I didn't like that.
Right.
And I was also teaching, which I liked a lot more, because then people are being engaged, they're excited by music, they're having epiphanies, you're having epiphanies with them, whereas playing the same blues tune the same way night after night, shit man, you might as well just have, you might as well just get a dumb job that makes actual money instead of crap like that, right? So I decided teaching was a thing for me. Side person was not my gig. And then I ran into you again.
Yes, that's true. We've known each other a long time.
And I started playing, this is Rent Romus I'm speaking to off camera over here. Hi, Rent Romus. Hello, everyone. And so I met you, and you were with the Lords of Outland. I played with you in that band for a while. Then I started getting back into that. And then when we put the Sim series together and changed the venue to the Union, that enabled me to really get back into, running a group.
Yeah.
Just having control over the composition situation, and really trying to experiment with these things. My current concerns.
I mean, that's where you've really increased your compositional palette, so to speak. I mean,
it's true.
You have a very wide range of pieces now. I can't even keep track anymore. I've lost place how many.
Right.
You put out a lot of records, and you've put out a lot of original music. So
6 out on Edgetone, a couple of self-released, over 150 tunes, which of course they're not all gems.
Right.
But I think the ones that I consider to be could be considered to be in the book, that we could play them and they would be reasonable. I would say 80, maybe 90 tunes probably. Yeah. I mean, just how many are on the CDs. But and it has really provided a great opportunity. Outsound has provided me a great opportunity to really, really grow as a composer and as a musician. Yeah. Because the other thing about that, when I met you and played in Lords, I was playing the electric fretless bass still.
True.
But in there in 2001, 2000, something like that, I got the upright bass. And since, as you see these all have upright bass players. These are weird international music.
Down below.
And here's a little rock.
Yeah, right.
So probably from 80, probably since I wrote Sucks on my Led Zeppelin t-shirt, at that moment it started being more and more upright players that I was listening to. So even as a fretless bass player, that's what I was going for. The organic sound, the vocal quality of that kind of a bass, which is have I moved off camera?
No, not at all.
And so that's one of the important things I learned from Bradford as an individual when you're playing. If it has a vocal quality, so the instrument is your voice. That's the important thing. Right. So anyway, I got the upright bass. Yeah. And that was the other thing that I've been sawing away at.
Since then.
For 14 years. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and you do a lot of improvisation, however. Let's let folks know. I mean, besides the compositional element, you're really very heavy to allow the improvisation to flourish and blossom even within your own compositions.
That's true.
And I'm wondering how you see the connection between improvisation and composition.
Sure. Well, this is not my idea, but composition, I think who's it? I don't know. Composition is just an improvisation that you wrote down,
right?
And transmitted to someone else. So what I like about composing is then you can kind of set the tone or a topic of conversation. But with most of my compositions, I would say that I like to leave it open. So you get jazz. The thing about jazz is you get to the end of the written part, and then it's a zombie. It just keeps going on, and you don't have to listen. I mean, it's best if you do, but people generally don't. there's no requirement as long as you're playing the right scale or the right chord, right?
Within a certain degree, yes.
It's possible to paint by numbers.
Right.
So what I like is when you leave people to a point where the only way out of the situation that you've gotten yourself into is to listen to everyone, and as a group be able to create something.
Wouldn't you say that was the original essence of what jazz really historically has always been?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about, though. It's like there's certain compartmentalization that has occurred over time because of the music getting older and becoming more classified.
Yeah.
And some folks are,
Sure.
play it more in a rote fashion. But as we all know, those of us who are really heavy into the music, that the tradition is actually to let the music kind of take over for yourself, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, so the idea with my compositions is that I want to create a situation where when the improvisation thing is happening with my group, Noertker's Moxie, is that self-determination. Everyone has self-determination to do the thing that they feel is going to best serve the music. So I don't want to tell anyone what to do. I don't even really like to tell people how to articulate the melody. What I write, I want it to be personalized in a certain way. So that whole idea of individuals having the great thing about music is everyone speaks at once, and yet everyone can be heard, and it's also a model for society when you're improvising. Because you're not drowning out it. Everyone's voice is being heard, and everyone is able to be themselves. So the whole goal is to get your own personal expression, to be able to come to terms with who you are, what you want to say, and how to do it in a way that everyone is not being, everyone's being heard. That's the idea.
Right. So, Obstreperous Doves, for instance, which you're bringing to the New Music Summit this year, August 2nd, I believe.
Yes.
Over at the Community Music Center. That's a pure improvisational group?
Pure improv, yes. Yes. Okay. I mean, we've decided, this is the one thing we decided as a group, that we would not rehearse.
I see.
And we never actually have rehearsed. I think this is maybe our fourth ever, It's a group that we play like once a year, probably.
Yeah.
And so each time, then you're playing, and it's a little different each year who's in the band, but basically as pure improvisation, then in a certain way you're having this dialogue with people like, well, what have you learned in the last year? But not by asking them, but by positing and listening to,
Right, exactly.
So the group is interesting because, like say Dave Mahali, the drummer, I've played with him for 27 years, I believe. So the cool thing about Dave is, although I've played with him forever and there's things he does and he's fond of, it's always a surprise with Dave Mahali.
I will agree with you on that.
Yeah. And then Carl, I've played with more, Carl Evangelista, the guitar player, probably, 5-6 times, so I've heard him play a lot. But the other people, I really, Nava, she sat in with for a couple of tunes just the last week or something, but I've never actually played with her, but I have heard her play. And Christina Stanley, again, I've heard her play once, and based on that, I thought this is going to be a good part of this group. So, so it's this whole realm of like shared experience with some people, and not really. In fact, I'm not even really sure where some of them are coming from because I've never actually spoken to them.
So in some way, one could almost say that you've composed this group. Actually, it sounds like you've thought this out.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, and so there's some familiar things, but even though, like, say, I don't know a person. I mean, I would assume anyone that's willing to go up on stage and improvise with people they've never played with before, then they have a large amount of music that they've heard. They've eaten a lot of sound.
Right.
Their ears are big, so it seems like there's bound to be some common grounds, and then there's some surprises. So that's the great thing. So you can really, it's not totally discomfort.
Right. Exactly.
But the discomfort is actually kind of comfortable. You become comfortable with this idea that I'm not really sure what's going to happen, because then you have to be in the moment.
So
that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
That's
right.
the important thing. If you can get something to a place, a composition or a group, where you're only, the only way to approach it is to be in the moment totally.
Mm-hmm.
Then we're talking.
Right.
Now we're talking. That's what it's like to be human. Then you don't have all these barriers.
Right. Exactly. You know what I'm interested in also, for those of us who, because I'll spell it out in the description of this video, but
if I keep digressing,
can you tell us what Obstreperous means and how the name of the group, Obstreperous Doves, is there a relationship there to the music, or is it? What is it? Tell us.
Yeah. Well, so I guess I started the group where there was the Occupy Wall Street thing. So I was tossing around this idea. Well, 'cause, you have the conventional hawks and doves. Hawks are warlike. Doves are peaceniks. I would say I'm a peacenik. But then the idea that a dove is a wilting flower or doesn't speak up, I didn't think that was the correct assessment. Because in a way, it's a hawk that doesn't speak up, and it just goes on happily with the status quo, murdering people, and just, it's ridiculous. So I thought, well, a dove is a good image, but how, and then there's my love of the $300 word, and obstreperous, it just means kind of surly in a way. It's argumentative, not willing to, shut the F up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So obstreperous person will get into it with you.
Oh.
So to be both a peacenik and outspoken,
Yes.
I think is the important thing. I think this interview series is called Outspoken.
Well, it's part of the Outspoken educational programs
Right.
that we have at Outsound.
Yeah. So it basically means outspoken peacenik.
I like Surly Dove actually better, but
Surly is good, but obstreperous maybe.
Yeah.
I like the idea that maybe someone somewhere will go get a dictionary.
Well, yes,
But
that
of
does
course,
happen. But just
you
in
would be
case,
required to know how to spell it.
right? Exactly. Well, if anyone looks at the description here on the YouTube channel, they'll be able to actually find the spelling of the word, hopefully properly,
Right.
and look it up.
So,
But I was just interested to find out, and that actually makes a lot of sense to me in terms of your musical approach as well.
Yeah.
There's even within your other group, Noertker's Moxie, there's a subtlety that exists in a lot of your music, but it's very clearly stated, and similar to that. So
Right. Yeah, and even the make up the group, Carl is Filipino, and he's a very politicized person, and his band Grex is actually, there's a lot of politicized things about that group,
Yeah.
And Mahali, I suppose. Just to be a musician is a political statement in America.
More and more.
To be an artistic, to have any type of, to want to have self-expression be your foremost reason to exist.
And play music as well.
Yeah, and so, I think that art is it's a political statement.
Yeah, as long as this hasn't been watered down and refiltered.
Well, then we get into what is art. But
well, that's right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, wow,
So
okay.
Self-determination in America is very political. It's not easy to do.
No, it's not. Yeah, exactly.
But it's easier than the other option, for me at least.
Well, right,
Yeah.
And, that just reminds me of
succumb to crap.
I guess just yesterday, speaking of liberation and self-determination, Charlie Hayden passed away yesterday, and I was reminded of his Liberation Orchestra, and that was during the Vietnam era, and how he was using his music to express his dismay with the system.
Exactly.
And you just reminded me, yes, Charlie Hayden. You just reminded me when you were talking about music as a political action, how even folks like himself were doing that as well.
Yeah, no, I just read an interview with him where he talked a lot about that. That people would come up to him in South Africa or in Portugal, where he was jailed for playing a freaking tune. Came up to him 10 years later, 2 decades later, and said, "You were instrumental in politicizing me." Because in Portugal he played the song for Che. He mentioned that it was in support of the African colonies that were being systematically brutalized by the dictatorship in Portugal, and he was imprisoned for it after a performance. Just bizarre. Anyway, so
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Hayden. Well, Hayden's an interesting cat because I've seen him a lot. I saw the Liberation Music Orchestra in the 80s, and I saw Old and New Dreams, and I've seen him a number of times. And in the 80s, I always go up to him and I always say, I play bass, and he'd go, are you playing the upright bass? I'd say, no. And he says, oh, too bad. The next time I see him, he says, well, did you get an upright bass? I said, no. He says, oh, well. So, unfortunately, I've seen him since I've been playing the upright bass, but I never was it at a venue where
you could actually
go up to him and say,
guess what?
Guess you bullied me.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So.
Well, still, nonetheless, I'm sure he was subtly making a hint.
Well, all kinds of hints, yeah.
And rather helpful, I would add too.
But his playing is completely that about self-determined, in many ways, because it's not a chord progression that he was playing with Ornette. This way of playing that frees you to speak your mind,
exactly,
or soul, or your spirit, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Great. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing the group now, and I hope
me too.
Right, and I hope others are as well after they watch the video and hopefully check out the summit. If not, then maybe Obstreperous Doves will have a record out sometime in the next year.
It's true. Well, we have some material.
And you'll have new material after summit as well.
Exactly. Yes.
Great. Okay.
So I'd like to.
Oh yeah, that's right. So on August 2nd at the Community Music Center, Bill Noertker brings in Obstreperous Doves, and the entire festival starts on July 27th. Check out outsound.org. And thank you, Bill Noertker.
Thank you, Red Romus. Thank you, audience.